Hi, I'm Maria Beloy. I was one of the students in Soweto when the uprising happened. The first student to be shot in the uprising was Hector Peterson. She was very young to die in a way that she the classes and go to the streets to fight, or the Boers will come and shoot us at the classes. So it was his Africans is being abolished just a little bit. I thought when I grow up we will not. Boers were shooting, they were shooting, and the students were fighting back with the stones, and the Boers were shot by the government. By that time was the Boers. We were fighting for changes, but they don't understand. Even if they do understand, they've got rights, they've got stuff, and then not knowing anything in their subject at school, they're not taught about our history. Children would understand themselves better. Today, I feel so, I don't know, I've got a doubt by the youth of today. You can't just go anywhere and don't see students, youth being drunk. It is so sad, because that day, most of youth's lives were that they don't know. They are not forced to do anything that is not irrelevant to them. And the youth of today, they don't know much about 1976 uprising.
This democratic state has sought to present students as a bunch of hooligans, a bunch of rascals, who have got nothing, no real legitimate struggle to wage.
Students are protesting about the high amount of fees. If you exclude me financially, where else must I go?
Free education has to be on the table. It has to be on the table. If we are saying that education is in fact the key that grants people access, then you can't hide the keys.
We've been backed into a corner. We have got no other option now but to take to the streets and shut down these institutions. So there was a gathering and barricades across campus to just block entrance into the campus, and that led to a campus-wide shutdown.
There's a countrywide shutdown. All universities in South Africa are shutting down.
The power struggle is so unbalanced that people find new ways. They find new ways to communicate their message.
Students are in a place where they've just had enough. We see it with UCT, we see it with Wits, we see it with Stellenbosch, we see it at Forte, we see it just across the road from us at Midlands as well, where there's a reality in our country that many students, within the majority population of this country, black students, are barred access from getting education.
The excuse is that there's no time. There's no time, there's no space for the conversation. Okay, so then let's paralyze everything else so that there's nothing but time and space to talk about this one thing. We're hoping that by doing this, there's not going to be the excuse of, we'd love to, but unfortunately, the VC of it is busy doing something else. No, he isn't. He's doing exactly what you're doing, and that's panicking.
One
of the things that for me have stood out about these protests all around the country is how deeply linked they are to other issues that relate to transformation in the country. So the struggle for reduction of fees is not isolated to the struggle for institutional transformation, the struggle for economic transformation in the country.
You can't separate high fees from VAC accommodation, from staff being mistreated, from a lack of black academics, from naming a university that after a murderer. All of these things it's the colony, right? And that's what's happening right now. So all these things are linked because people are saying they're rejecting the colony.
The reality of our situation on this campus is that a lot of what black students have brought to the table regarding just the difficulty of being in this space, the complacency and the shuffling of feet regarding transformation have led to an exhaustion.
This is where the notion of institutional culture comes in. Because everything about the institutional culture, everything about the way that the universities are set up, not only just in their systems, but just in their environment, in their texture, everything about it says that you're not supposed to be here.
There's nothing that the government fears more than seeing masses on the streets. The government of South Africa genuinely only begins to act when they see masses on the streets.
They're sending out armed police against peaceful, unarmed students who simply want answers, who simply want to have access to funding to be able to live in the space. Whenever black bodies go outside of the bounds of colonial policing, that is the kind of response that you're going to get. This is 2015, but we feel like we're in the 1980s right now. How can this be? How is it that we're in a society where when black students are saying, listen, we want to have access to education, we want to have access to our funding that we're promised to by NSFAS, and yet this is the response that is given.
One of the things that we are seeing about the kind of violence that the police is using on the student, the police are using on the student, is very reminiscent of apartheid violence. During apartheid era, when students would go and protest for very legitimate issues, the government would respond with the use of excessive violence, excessive force and all of that. And when you see something like that happening in democratic South Africa, it is reminiscent of that, but it breaks my heart because it means that the government of this country has come to a point where it's in very many ways beginning to shape itself like the apartheid government. The fact that even a minister who can see that there is a serious crisis happening in the country, students are on the streets when they're supposed to be writing exams, can simply glibly sit back and say there is no crisis and all of that. And in the same way that he's saying there's no crisis, these institutions are calling police on us. It's the same way that apartheid was treating us. They were saying black people are not an issue, they're not a serious issue, they're not a crisis, we must not take them seriously. And yet in response would then bring violence to come and try to contain us.
Colonialism really set the clock, eh? It set the clock, and it's black bodies, and it's danger, and it's destroy.
So it's a silencing technique, it's an apartheid technique, and it's something that's very problematic that the government of this country really needs to sit down and ask itself, what kind of country is it building when it's bringing back the same things that we inherited from apartheid and it's bringing them in a democratic dispensation and using them against innocent, helpless students who are seeking a very legitimate struggle, who are fighting for a just cause.
It's very discriminating towards us students because we are fighting for a good cause. At the end of the day, if fees decrease, it benefits everyone. So I don't understand why we are being criminalized when we're doing such a good thing.
So the violence really is a response in terms of barring students from access to education, but also barring them from the right to actually protest. And so what we're finding now is that this increased violence is actually threatening the lives of students, and management has failed to step up and to protect the students.
Why aren't VCs and other divisions of management putting pressure on our government to fulfill a commitment of achieving education of the right, rather, to education for black students?
students in South Africa have always played a very critical role. Historically, this is historical. So I think we must understand it, of course, with regards to the prevailing material conditions of students taking ownership of this struggle and exercising their own agency, but also understanding that this is a historical issue in South Africa. This country has always been brought to its knees, or the unfair treatment that government has, meted out on people has always been brought to its knees by students. So you look at the students of 1976, you look at students later in 1978, you look at student protests and how students also had such a huge impact in the, your community and trade union struggles and so on over the years. Students have always played a critical role in the struggle. And so I think we are continuing with what has always been a historical pattern.
There's nothing unreasonable about what we're saying, right? Especially as an oppressed population, right? What we're essentially asking for is the right to exist, and the right to exist on our own land. And that is actually the bare minimum.
All we want to do is get answers. All we want to do is get access to the resources that we have been promised to be able to study in these spaces. We are in a space where we want to be able to get into and continue with our careers in higher education in order to be able to better ourselves as well. We're trying to break a cycle of poverty here. And that's why we've mobilized and we've united our struggles in order to achieve this objective.
This working class question that we are seeing being raised here at Rhodes is a struggle that is interwoven within the bigger struggle that is happening in the country, the struggle for economic transformation, the struggle for social cohesion, which can't be won until you first won the struggle for economic transformation. And so I think this is a bigger struggle. It's a bigger ideological struggle that is not only, regional here at Rhodes. It's a bigger struggle that is national and perhaps even a global struggle, because this is a struggle against a system, a mode of production that is rendering a lot of people disenfranchised. And this is a global issue.
It's not even about just university. It's about this damn country that we keep saying is one thing, but it isn't. It's something else, right? And we're trying to have a more robust conversation about what it is and how we can get it to what we said we want it to be. And one of those ways is free education. If in fact we are saying that education is the key to some form of dignity, in this country as it stands, then we simply cannot push people out.
Moya how lale, kiri moya how chule, ari tuanele, ari ponele, ari wonsane, ari sosheva, ritolunza, musowaro, keruwa,
I used to struggle a lot in high school. At school, there would be noise in the room, people just jumping around, throwing papers. The teachers, of course, be ignored like he wasn't there at all. I mean, the atmosphere was just totally different. You just felt like you had a shebeen.
When I I was in grade 3, when I was in class, and it was time for us to start telling each other what our names were, you know. And my name was Buhle, which a lot of people find it's a difficult name to say. And instead of following through and trying to learn how to say my name, often teachers or adults would just dismiss it, you know, and give me nicknames like B, or say my name completely wrong without blinking an eye, like call me Bushle or Buchle. So I think from that moment when I started to see how quickly people could dismiss your being or your presence, it was from there that I decided, okay, cool, what I want to do is I want to learn how to tell stories so that I can tell my own and teach other people how to tell their own.
When I introduce myself to people, they ask, what do you do? You know, are you studying? And I say economics and finance, and I'm soon met with an abrupt response like, okay. So you're going to be a big banker, you're going to be working in JSE, Investec, the big firms, living the high life. And I look at them, I just say, no, it couldn't be further from the truth.
When I came to Soweto, that's when I saw the difference of having a teacher at school and then having someone who's like your parent to you, who's guiding you all the way. You don't feel like he'll judge you. Being a tutor to a student, I get to share my experiences. I mean, to make them feel that, you know what, it's not a hard thing. You sort of feel like a more hands-on teacher, like sharing with the student while you are a student makes it more comfortable than being in a classroom. I'm not there to judge them. I'm just following the same procedures that were done for me to be helped, you know.
I find what's been really, really impactful is not waiting to talk to people in ivory towers. It's to go into communities and start doing the work. Especially because once you've done the work or have started doing the work, it's far easier to then say to people, look, this is what we have done. This is what we are doing. You can see it. Do you not want to support it? Okay, firstly, there's a problem that girls are missing up to 50 days of school because of their period. To me, as soon as I heard that, I realized that's not only that's not a health policy problem, that's an education policy problem. That means that young girls are literally being punished because that is what it is. Not being able to go to school because of what your body does naturally is not okay. So what a moon cup does, what it can resolve is it lasts for up to 10 years, which means that if you go to high school for 5 years, it means that you're giving these girls an opportunity to go to school for up to 5 years, but to also go to varsity. There isn't ever going to be a point where someone's going to give you exactly what it is that you imagine. The potential for us to be creating something far bigger than ourselves is more important now than ever.
My idea of going into economics and finance was to leverage the power of business to make a social change. I always thought, in my capacity, what can I do to help the next person? I don't have much to give. I'm a student. I can't just go and donate heap loads of money to a charity because I don't have that. So not many organizations are trying to help elderly people. Not many charities were aimed at helping the vulnerable, the differently abled, those who are seriously disadvantaged in our communities. So the time I felt where I was really making a difference and helping those who needed it most was when I got involved in the Moya project in Khayelitsha. We helped about 50 to 60 residents, all differently abled, some with physical handicaps and some with mental handicaps. The first time I was part of the project, I was very overwhelmed. I've never been around so many people who are differently abled, whether it be mental or physical handicaps, and made me realize that there's a need for us to go beyond ourselves, to do something greater than ourselves, to equal the playing field and to help all those who are less fortunate than us. If we look back at the events of June 16, the Sharpeville massacre, the Soweto uprising, our youth has revolutionized our country. June 16 to me represents the power of youth.
"16th of June 1976. At first, everything was calm at Morris Isaac School of Soweto. But as soon as the teacher started the class in Afrikaans, the mixed language of the hated white people, all the pent-up tension of the last months was released. The students left the classroom.
The atmosphere was very tense, but on the other hand, very deceptive, because very few people understood what was going on except the few people who had been working with the students underground. And very few of us knew exactly what was going on, so that on the whole, on the surface, it looked as if things were normal, and yet we knew very well that the students were at work preparing for the 16th of June.
The compulsory use of the Afrikaans language, introduced by the government, was a good reason to protest against the whole educational system and so against the apartheid.
That was an education for the black people which was meant to keep him in a subservient position. He had to know that he had to be taught in such a way that he must know that he has to serve his master, and his master was a white man.
More and more students were pouring into the streets. They had no clue yet that their peaceful procession would end up in bloodshed, even though the police were constantly arriving. In the beginning, all was calm, and the students did not take their presence threateningly.
We saw police, but we didn't take notice of those police. And as we go on, we were singing, chanting. To us, it was very fun. It was nice. We were so thrilled.
More and more policemen arrived, and more were coming with trained dogs. The atmosphere became more tense. Then the first shots were fired. There was chaos and surprise.
I was very, very scared because I thought they were going to wipe us all because we had no weapons. I was very, very angry and confused because I didn't really understand why should we be beaten by dogs and tear gas and gunshots. It was really frustrating because we were peacefully marching.
Antoinette's childhood ended in a drift of bullets. On the 16th of June, she lost her younger brother Hector in the bloody street fight. When she was trying to find him, a young man was coming towards her, carrying a lifeless body in his arms.
And now my heart was starting to beat very fast. Now I was trembling now. I couldn't resist. I was trembling. I didn't know what's happening. You could see they're carrying somebody. So I went closer. What helped me is that I saw part of the front shoe. That this shoe belongs to Hector. That means this is Hector.
Despite the fact that Hector was transported immediately to hospital, nobody could help him.
When we reached the clinic, the doctor said no, there was nothing he could do. So he asked me all the particulars of Hector, and then I had to give that to him.
Pictures of the student rebellion and the slaughter were published in world media on the same day.